On this day of October 19, back in 1977, following the murder of black consciousness leader Steve Biko. This was in detention. The then Justice Minister, Jimmy Kruger, arrested editors and banned the World and Weekend World papers. The editor of the World editor, Percy Qoboza, was taken into detention and held for 5 months under the Section 10 of the Internal Security Act in the Modderbee Prison. Today, as we commemorate Freedom Day, we look at how far we have come and the challenges that modern media is facing with a growing number of online platforms, fake news and citizen journalism. For more on this, we speak now to SANEF Media Freedom Chairperson, Makhudu Sefara, who has been gracious enough to join me in studio on this important day. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with your overriding impression or assessment of where we are as a media in South Africa. Your general sense, do we have the latitude to do our work without fear, favor or prejudice?
Well, not quite. So you started in 1977 with the banning of the World and the arrest of Percy Qoboza. At the time, the regime, the apartheid regime, used our country's laws to stop journalists from doing their work. If you fast forward to today, we don't have those laws that stop journalists from doing their work. But there's quite a number of things that happen on the ground, in the courts, and even in corporate in corporate boardrooms that inhibit journalists' ability to do their work. You would have seen, for example, the attacks that we've seen in Alex, the killing of a station manager. You would have seen journalists from here going to Tembisa to cover, community uprising, and Newzroom Afrika and other media houses, like people leaving company cars there because they are being attacked by people on the ground. You may also be aware that there's journalists who contemplated leaving their homes because in the communities from which they are reporting, people who are reported or claimed to be associated with Operation Dudula, who are providing critical coverage of that organization, are being targeted, and they are being considered counter-revolutionaries, and so therefore, they must be isolated for attacks in those areas. You would have also seen journalists, coming under physical attacks in many areas. So those things happen. While the law allows journalists to do their work, the environment in which journalists work has become hostile in a different way. If you go to online, for example, then you find a different thing altogether, where women journalists are subjected to bullying and harassment, and people are sent like horrific pictures, and they are threatened with all manner of things. All of us on media are labeled, and you write one thing, you are associated with this faction, then you write another, you're associated with the other faction. It becomes very, very toxic and something that, that's very concerning.
You've said a mouthful. I want to pick up on whether or not those in authority should be saying or doing something about behavior towards journalists. And I say this on the back of what the President wrote recently, lauding the work of the media not so long ago. The Chief Justice of this country congratulated the media and thanked them for the commission, the Judicial Commission into State Capture, which he ran. So journalists are a vital cog in this democracy, right? Why is it that we must beg to do our work without intimidation?
So you mentioned the police. Perhaps let's start there. One of the biggest concerns we have is that when journalists come under siege from ordinary people in communities, like I mentioned Tembisa a minute ago, you, as a journalist, can't run to the police because the police themselves become perpetrators and they attack journalists.
They formed an attitude towards journalists.
Yeah. So where you go to a place where there's a service delivery protest and all manner of things, and the police are responding to the protest, and you come, you identify yourself, or you're carrying cameras, and they can see that you're carrying cameras and you're there doing your work, which is recognized in terms of the constitution of the country, the police will still attack you. We've had discussions with the Minister of Police. We've had discussions with the minister before the current minister. There's agreements that are in place. This is how the police must behave when they relate to or when they interact with journalists. Some do and some don't.
Yeah.
What I would like to see, to answer your question, is the minister making sure that, you know, that small thing called internal communication in a big organization, that the minister of the police can just make sure that the people who fall under his leadership do the things that we agreed with him that they're going to do. They relate to journalists the way they're supposed to relate to them.
Yeah.
That's one. Two, you also mentioned the Chief Justice. Now, we are concerned that press freedom is becoming increasingly expensive because we go to various courts. Recently there was a situation in KwaZulu-Natal, the Mhlatuze water and corruption-related stuff.
Yeah.
We get there and they say no cameras and microphones are allowed inside the court. It's an order. And we say, but when was this application made? Why is this the starting attitude? Why must it cost us, as the media, funds to go and speak or acquire, get some lawyers to come and argue for us to get the decision changed at great cost in order for us to be able to sit in court and do our work? And so the thing that, back to your question, we would want to see happen is the Chief Justice making sure that the magistrates, the judges, and the people who fall under him understand that as the media, we are not there just for ourselves. We are there providing important democratic service for our country. And that he, as the Chief Justice, knows that. But the people who report to him don't act like they too understand what he understands.
Sure.
And that's another challenge.
Yeah. Look, there's lots of cases or lots of instances where we journalists have not conducted ourselves or not covered ourselves in glory. And I remember this specific case recently, the Senzo Meyiwa murder case.
Yes.
We do make mistakes.
Yes.
Okay. But the important work we do most of the time, that surely has got to give us some latitude to say, are we becoming freer or not? Where am I going with this? A first major case in this country where a former president has now taken a journalist to court. The journalist is arguing that I was merely doing my job. And so, my simple and final question to you is, do you think, as media practitioners, we are free in this country, or those freedoms are becoming curtailed?
I think the effect of the case that former President Zuma has put forward in his private prosecution of Billy Downer and Karen Mon is that we are getting to a point as a country where we are criminalizing journalism. That Karen Mon sits there in the newsroom and is speaking to sources, trying to get information, the same thing that you and I and many other people in various newsrooms do. And her behavior is being criminalized. Now she has to sit in the dock because former president can't accept a decision of the NPA that there isn't a crime committed here, we don't want to prosecute, and he feels, the law allows him, let me do this. But the effect of that decision is going to have a chilling, in fact, it's calculated to have a chilling effect in many newsrooms where people are looking at cases and or information relating to former president and many other people, and they're thinking, if I do this, am I going to end up in the dock like Karen? Do I want to end up in the dock like Karen?
Will I have money to defend myself?
Exactly. And so as a consequence of that, there's a lot of information that is crucial for our democracy that may not surface because a person we elected to be our number one citizen at a point in time has conducted himself in a way that he looks at journalism and says, I'm criminalizing this. It's a shame.
Makhudu Sefara, let's leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for coming on this important day.
Thank you
for having me. The SANEF Media Freedom Chairperson. Lots to chew on for the media fraternity.